You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Welcome back. This is the Work It podcast with Tiffany and Gerald. Now, on this show, we have talked quite a bit about retrenchments, and we've also spoken to people who have been retrenched before. But one thing we haven't talked about is how you can use the retrenchment payout, or what's known as the golden handshake, to restart your career again.
Yeah, this amount can be huge, right? But if you don't know how to use it properly, it can disappear very quickly.
That's true.
So from my own experiences, I've heard of how people use it for many different reasons. They use it to cover monthly expenses during a job search, or they go for holidays. They use it to start courses. I know someone who's used it to start a business. I also know someone who took his 6 months package to bring his aging mother for a month-long holiday somewhere. Just because he felt like he didn't spend enough time with her.
Okay.
Yep. So how about you, Tiffany? Do you know anyone who used their golden handshake?
So it wasn't really like a very big golden handshake, but I know someone who was retrenched right after he got married. So what he did was that he just used that money and splurged it on his new wife. They went for a really solid honeymoon.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
he's young and he just thought, I don't know whether I'll get this opportunity again. Why not? Let's just go for like a month-long holiday to somewhere we have always talked about.
Wow. So there's a lot of ways to use money, and sometimes when you have
Yeah.
a lot of money, then it opens many possibilities as well. So today we really want to hear from someone who used their retrenchment package to restart or recharge their career. So with us today, I'm very happy we have Lily Fung. She was retrenched about 4 years ago. She took the leap of faith with her financial payout to embark on a career path as a financial advisory manager. Today, she's helping people manage and plan their finances. Welcome, Lily, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Lily, we appreciate that you are coming here to tell us your story, and just to give people a bit of background. So you were with your previous company for 20 years before you were retrenched. So what were your initial thoughts when you were first delivered the news?
When the news actually hit me, where I received the call from my Hong Kong CFO, informing me that my role was actually made redundant because of a closure of a major line of business. If I were to describe the feeling, it's like if you could imagine like a ton of bricks hitting you directly. Technically, I shouldn't be surprised, really, because I was part of the decision-making process as well to close that major line of business.
Oh.
And also, as head of finance, I understood that companies are not charitable organizations, right? Most companies exist for bottom line, right? So redundancy was just part of the equation. But then I have to say this, even knowing it didn't make it any easier. Yeah. So you could imagine my emotions back then. I would say I was devastated and disappointed as well, because I spent my 20 years of youth, right?
Yes.
With the company. I was headhunted into the organization at the age of 28. And then by then I left them, I was 48. So literally I sold my youth to the company, right? And I was super passionate about my career. I love it all. It was more difficult for me, maybe because I felt that this job was more than a job for me,
Okay.
right? Because it was like a part of my identity. It was my passion, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that this passion is going to go away, so it was quite hard for me to take it.
And of course, with that going away, something else came in, the package that he gave to you. I'm sure...
Oh, of course, that's the nice part, right?
Were you part of the thought process of putting together
The
severance
package?
packages
No,
for
definitely
people who
not.
will leave?
Due to sensitivity,
Okay.
right? But I have to say it is a good golden handshake for me.
Okay.
Yeah, as a form of recognition as well.
In the ballpark figure, I mean, are we
I
talking
have to
about...
say a high 6-digit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that normal? Is that sort of like standardized across the industry or even outside of this industry?
I have to say Singapore doesn't really have a regulation on redundancy. It's more on best practice.
Okay.
So it ranges between, for every 1 year service, you get a week to a month. That is average, the norm.
Okay.
What was your immediate reaction when you knew that this was coming your way? Because it's not a small amount,
Yeah.
right? What were some of the thoughts that you had about, like, what do I do with this money?
Sure. So for me, I didn't really think much about the money at the immediate moment, right? I am a workaholic, right? So, it scares me so much that the moment I'm going to stop work, what am I going to do, right? So that was my immediate priority, more so than what's to do with my money, right? But then I just want to share that being a chartered accountant myself, right? I have always been super passionate about wealth accumulation and financial security for my past 26 years of corporate life. So I did build my own financial safety net over the course of my career. Of course, this lump sum money is actually a cream on top for me.
Yeah.
And I guess the most important combination that I would say would be, first thing first, be financially secured. And I took like 26 years to build that. So that's important. So on hindsight, yes, if anybody were to ask me when I guide my younger clients, that's what I tell them to. Build that financial safety net early. And then with the redundancy money that comes over and above,
It's like
that's
a bonus,
where,
right?
Exactly.
Where you can
Yeah.
sort of still be able to dream and plan for more,
Yes,
right?
exactly, right? So not so much dream about, oh, how do I start spending this lump sum? Should I buy myself a car or what? It's not so much about that, but rather having choices in life for you.
And it also gives you the ability to, let's say, pursue a second passion.
Exactly.
Maybe something that you have put aside in your younger days and then decided
What is
to
it
come
that
back to it.
resonates with you? What is your mission? What is your purpose in life, right? That you think you could, take a pause from the corporate world and then do something different. So instead of responding out of fear, we can react with intention. So for me, it's different, right? Because I'm in a different stage of life, if I were to say it. So if a younger generation gets hit with redundancy, it's not necessary for them to pause to say, hey, I want to go into my passion to do something different. They can still go into corporate, but at least it gives them that bandwidth to pause and think and do their inner works to decide what they can do.
So at that point of time, did you have any, say, aging parents to take care of? Do you
I
have
still have.
children? You still have?
I still have. So I'm in the
you're
sandwich-
still taking, you're sandwich generation. So you have younger kids as well
Not
to
young,
take care?
but I have kids in uni.
Okay.
And then I have my dad.
And then you have home loan
Yeah.
that you were servicing?
Yes.
So how many months of emergency savings did you plan for before you had this extra bonus?
Oh, okay. I think
Because
easily.
I usually hear people say 6 months.
Easily, I had 2 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds extremely healthy.
Yeah, financial definitely not an issue for me. That's why I could take time, right? I literally took a year to figure out exactly what I want to do.
Okay.
And even after figuring out, it took me a while to search for the right organization to join, for example.
I see.
Yeah, and then having to sit for all the exams because it's a total pivot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What was that pivot that you did? Why did you do it?
Right. So I'm now an independent financial advisor. Back then, I have to say when the redundancy news hits me, I had two choices, right? One is to choose the safer option, which is to go back to the corporate world.
Yeah, find another employer.
Yeah, to be a CFO in another company, right?
Was it going to be easy for you if you
Yes,
had done so?
definitely
Okay.
easy because I was only 48 back then. So still I'm in my prime years, I have to say, right, to be a CFO in a company. So no issues with that. In fact, I went for several interviews, but then I kindly rejected their offer.
Okay.
Because back then I was still toying with the idea, what do I want to do in my life? I was so passionate in my previous corporate role, and I know based on my personality, I'm going to chase my tail one more time. My second option is to challenge myself, to take the leap of faith to do something totally different.
Which was financial advisory.
Yes.
Was that something that you had always wanted to pursue?
Not really. I started to ask myself a few questions like, how did I even decide to become a financial advisor, right? So first question that I asked myself was, how can I leverage my 26 years of very rich and solid finance experience to do something more meaningful?
Yeah.
Right?
You didn't want to start from scratch in a
I didn't want
totally
to.
different
I didn't
industry.
want to because my strength is in finance, right?
Yes.
So I started to ask myself those questions. What are the transferable skills? What is it that I can do to do something more meaningful? Meaningful, in my perspective back then, was how can I help individuals rather than supporting stakeholders in MNCs, for example? That's where I said, all these questions sort of came to a realization.
Okay.
I felt that, hey, it would be so interesting if there is a qualified finance professional, literally a chartered accountant, right, out there who's been through and navigated the corporate life, right, and who understood all these corporate leaders, right? It will be so powerful if there is such a person to empower them to also start planning for their own financial roadmap so that one day if uncertainties hit them, just like myself, they will be able to react with confidence rather than out of fear. So I thought, hey, that's interesting. I'm going to give that a shot.
But I must ask though, because at the back of my head, I'm still thinking that, okay, you had this high 6-figure sum, right?
Yes.
Did you need so much money to study, get certification in financial advisory? What else did you do with the money that you had?
The truth is, I took the entire lump sum and I invested it.
That can be quite risky, isn't it?
Oh, because I know where to place my risk, right?
I see.
So I actually diversify my portfolio quite well. And in fact, this lump sum was strategized towards capital preservation more than anything else. But the whole intention of that was to generate passive income, right? Because I wanted this lump sum money that I have worked so hard and is my sweat and blood in it, right?
And your youth.
Exactly, and my youth in it. So I wanted that lump sum to work harder for me.
Okay.
So that's where I decided I'm not going to place it in the bank and just have the comfort that I have that money. So just in case my financial advisory business fails, then I can go back to this lump sum, right? No. So to me, I think one thing is about mindset, right? So I'm the kind of person, I have gone through so many business cycles. I led the organization through success every time there is a crisis. So I told myself, I cannot fail, even if I move on to financial advisory.
I'm just thinking there are 3 groups of people. The way they use their retrenchment money, generally I think it's 3 groups, right? The first group of people who take their golden handshake and they spend it very quickly away, maybe without much thought, maybe not the most useful manner, right? Then there's the middle group of people who, I think the majority, they use it to do something for their careers, they transit, maybe use it to manage some of their loans. And then we have people like Lily, who had been planning their careers, their finances all the while.
Yes.
And then right now at this point, they are just using the golden handshake as to open up more options for them in the future.
Was there any point of time at the start where you felt that there were possible financial risks that you were going to undertake? Were there fears that you felt at that point of time?
Definitely. There were fears for sure. When I made that bold leap of faith, right, it was scary, I have to say. Why scary is really because for the past 26 years, I have always been in a structured corporate environment. So having to tell myself that, hey, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to start all over in a new role, self-employed, totally going into the uncertainties of self-employment. It was really scary. My heart was like beating super fast, right? But then again, I guess different stage of life, right? So for me, it's no longer about money anymore. Because if it's all about money, I will just go to the traditional route to be a CFO of another company.
Yeah.
I just have to close my eyes, do my best. Every month I get my paycheck.
You would just head for stability.
Exactly,
really,
right? I asked myself, what would my next career gonna look like?
So Lily, if today you had to give some advice to people who have received golden handshakes, right, of various amounts, then what would be your advice to that group of people? I mean, remember that I said there's 3 groups, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the middle group,
Yeah.
the ones who have not done much financial planning.
Okay, the first mindset I think is important for people who have been made redundant is do not allow redundancy to define who you are as an individual, okay? There's really no shame to it. It is part of commercial decision because I was part of it, so I knew that it needed to be done, right? And bear in mind that you have value. So do not spiral into depression or anything of that sort, right? So that's my first advice. My second advice would be redundancy is really not the end. I call it a redirection, right? Try to leverage on your strengths and even your transferable skill sets and then see what is a good match to find your new path. And the last part, which is to respond to your question, Gerald, is my advice would be try to avoid impulse spending. Okay? Because I think to a lot of people, right, they hardly see such big lump sums. That's the truth, right?
Yes, correct.
And when they see it, they are very like tempted to just spend it very quickly, right? For people that have debts, try to look at like the high interest paying debts to try to pay down some of the debts, because I think it doesn't quite make sense to have money sitting in the bank that is generating so minuscule kind of interest rate, and then at the back you are still paying high interest for debts, right?
Okay.
Try to maneuver that. And then for people that is already quite settled, maybe they can just put aside some for rainy days, just a few months to tide them through. Try to invest the balance, but don't invest it in high risk because you want to preserve your capital.
Yeah, these are good advice. I mean, just to summarize, so don't impulse spend. Secondly is to cut your debt as much as possible.
Yeah.
But of course, weigh up the interest that you are paying, because some people might say that, but the interest that I'm paying is not going to get me what I'm going to get from my investment. So which brings us to your third point, which is try and invest as much as you can. Go and learn, speak to people.
Correct.
Make sure that the money grows for you. But I think there will be a group of people who will also say, but you know, Lily, I work so hard all my life.
Yeah.
A bit like you as well.
Pamper yourself.
Yeah, I want to pamper myself. Or I'm in my early 20s.
Yeah.
My runway is still very long. I want to just go and splurge and, I don't know, go and see the Northern Lights or go on that very nice train in Switzerland or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, should we be telling these people to delay their gratification?
If I were in their shoes, I will. The reason is really because you don't want to come to a crossroad where you took all the money and spent it all very quickly, and then you realize that, oh, I'm stuck.
That's when you start panicking.
So
Okay.
once you have fear, you start panicking, you become desperate.
Then you make wrong decisions. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you become desperate, you will make the wrong decision, to your point. So that's the whole problem. And we don't want to get there. Because once you react out of fear, it may not necessarily be putting yourself in a good place. You want to have that safety net so that you can take your time to really do your inner works as well, and network to get to know more people, speak with more people to see what is the right next game plan for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us this. I mean, if anything, I feel that if I ever am in that position, I would love to speak with you again and go, what should I do, you know, with this money? Obviously, we try and give our listeners a bit more broad brushstrokes of what they can do with their money, but everyone's situation is very unique. And like you say, sit down, ask yourself, where are you at this stage of your life? What are your needs? And where can you better deploy the money first before you start considering, okay, what else can I do?
Yeah.
So thank you for giving us so many helpful tips. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, welcome back to our Ask Me Anything segment, where we take on a question that you have sent us. Our listener, who I'll call Lucy, sent us this one. Lucy is in a small team of about 8 people. Everyone is working in a high-pressured environment with long working hours. It's a specialist job, and they have been asking for more manpower because they're afraid to make mistakes. Several mistakes have already been made because people are overworked. As a result, the team has been subjected to a few internal audits, and they're just told to do better. Now, when they highlighted that they need help, management shuts them down, according to Lucy, and calls a few of them troublemakers. Lucy is asking if middle management is not listening to them and there are problems caused by a manpower shortage, how can they escalate this and to whom?
I think the situation here is that they have escalated it,
Yes.
but the middle management is not listening. So when I read this question, right, I just thought to myself, like, wow, I feel for Lucy and the team because it sounds like they are really trying their best, but they're not getting the support from the management.
Yeah. Then do I whistle blow? Do I go higher up? Because I think a lot of people do wonder whether the higher ups know that there is an issue and they're also trying to cover up. Then it's going to be even worse.
Yeah. So I think at this point, it really depends on how much faith Lucy has in her management.
The highest one?
Because there are sometimes management they know,
Okay.
but they don't want to respond or they're not responding appropriately. So the issue is not with not knowing, but the issue is that management is not stepping up to do what needs to be done. So if I'm Lucy, right, I would say I would look at the management's responses. Is it that the leaders that are there, are they close to the ground? You know, if they're close to the ground and if they are really caring about the operations and the work that they do, right, then maybe there's a chance that I can look for the right leader to speak to. You also know that there are leaders who are just on the ground for tokenism, just to show face, they're not really caring about the worker. So I think she needs to see, are there such people, such managers in the office? I think also in many companies, they have got employee sentiment, engagement surveys. Has there been certain things like that done before?
And feedback loops as well.
Yes, feedback
have there
loops.
been things that have
Yes.
been mentioned a few times?
Yes, correct. So usually, like from my experiences, people do give feedback, but they get very disappointed and discouraged when the feedback is not acted on. And year after year, the same thing happens. I'm guessing here that Lucy's situation is not the first time. I believe that this has been repeated for a particular amount of time already. And maybe it's getting like too much talk, no action.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to be bothered. And yet they are the ones who have to face the consequences.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I hear that Lucy is saying that they were subjected to a few internal audits. And these internal audits have shown that they could be doing better. So from the management's point of view, there is no problem in terms of a manpower shortage. So what exactly is wrong in this situation?
So when internal audits flag out things, right, then it's supposed to send management into investigation and mitigation mode.
Yes.
They start to look out for what's the issue, what's the root cause. Is it manpower? Is it resources? Is it a policy or process issue?
And they found that there's nothing. It's just that the team has to just do better. That's what they say.
So I'm just wondering, why is there that the ground feedback that it's not enough manpower, and the lack of manpower is causing all these mistakes to be made. So somewhere along the line, we can see that between the management and the ground staff, right, there is this
Already
gap.
there's a disconnect,
There's
right?
a disconnect, there's a mistrust, and if this carries on, right, I think it's just going to make work very unbearable.
Okay.
Yeah. So at this point of time, for Lucy's case, I think it's either you stand your ground and you try to hope for the best, look at the leaders that you have, and try to see whether you get to the right person or wait for the right opportunity for things to change. That's one. The other one is, of course, you leave. You find another place where you can contribute meaningfully, because I think she loves her work.
Yes.
Yeah, so find another place where you can perform, you can do your role without all these situation and environmental factors. Of course, there's also a third thing, right? Some people would say, you should be the change.
Yeah.
You should stay on and you know the issues well. Raise your hand, volunteer to try to solve it. But that's a long shot.
Yeah. Whistleblowing?
Whistleblowing, if the policy is there and if the management is indeed serious about it. My own gut feel from this is that they know, but they're not doing anything about it. And they're just pushing the blame down and letting the people on the ground shoulder it. So if that's that kind of response from the management, then no amount of whistleblowing or feedback will help.
Okay. Well, Lucy, I hope that your situation turns for the better, and I hope our conversation perhaps will even give you the right tools to advocate for yourself or your team. If, like Lucy, you have a work-related question, do send it to us. We are at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. We are also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Me Listen, and YouTube, where a video version of this is at. The team behind the Work It podcast is Crispina Robert, Joanne Chan, Junaini Johari, and Saye Win. Sound mixing is by Carrie Lim, video by Hanida Amin.
I'm Gerald.
And I'm Tiffany. Have a smooth work week ahead.